Is this on?
That doesn't make any noise.
I can't hear it.
Oh,
Do we have headphones so I can hear him tapping?
No matter. This episode of the Carmudgeon Show is pretty ranty.
Sponsored by Porsche. No,
unsponsored by Porsche. We'll probably get a hit
canceled
put out
by
on
Porsche.
us.
This episode of the Carmudgeon Show has been canceled by Porsche and all air-cooled Porsche owners.
Yes, but it is still part of the Haggerty Podcast Network, so we've created a bit of a liability for them, much like many of their customers as an insurance company.
But listen, we're focusing on Luftgekühlt, which is a air-cooled Porsche show that just happened we believe the first time in Northern California. But actually the show is really not about that. And even if you're not into Porsches, you might find this pretty interesting because I don't care.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, because you don't care about Porsches and you stayed awake the entire time.
I did. And I made fun of a lot of people.
Yes, so did I, but in a less lighthearted way.
I mean, I'm angry.
Yes.
At everyone. At all times. And on that, Jinx, hold on.
Oh, did we say who we were?
Doesn't matter. They know.
Okay, great.
Plus Jinx. We can't talk now.
And scene. Uh-oh, Jason's fallen asleep. But he has caffeine.
It hasn't hit yet.
Oh, it's not yet functioning.
Oh, it's too early in the morning for this shit.
Or are you just bored by the fact that Luftgekühlt was this weekend? Did you go? No.
Of course I didn't go. First of all, I'm sorry. So I heard from people that you had to buy tickets in advance and they were sold out.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck you.
You know what else happened? This is a very festive, we shouldn't throw them under the bus so much because they did put together a very nice event. However,
I would have liked to know.
However, I entered my car and then I paid the entry for the car, blah, blah, blah. Everything's fine. And then Paulo actually was like, hey, do you have an extra ticket? And I was like, yeah, I think you could just ride in with me. And I started investigating. I was like, oh, wait, I don't have a ticket. My car has a ticket, but I don't have a ticket. They sell the tickets for humans driving the car separately from the car going in. And so I was like, I paid $95 already. I assume that gets me in. And then I was like, oh no, it's an additional $115 for early entry to get a human inside the car.
What's the alternative? You push your car in?
I don't know. You just leave, they bring I don't know what would have happened. Anyway, I secured a ticket even though they weren't on sale by contacting one of the organizers. And he very graciously sent me a ticket, which I was delighted by. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't have a ticket when I arrived. In any case, the event is an incredible venue, starting with the positives. Lots. Jason's already like, I am so over this.
Okay, before we start, Luftgekühlt is a very difficult word to say for Americans. That means air-cooled. Mm-hmm. And it brings together air-cooled 911, air-cooled Porsche fans from all over the country or state to congregate in one place. And then to plug up the fucking freeway. So I didn't go. I had other shit to do. We were filming. But I did find myself on the highway in the afternoon in a sea of mostly water-cooled Porsches. There were a bunch of modern water-cooled stuff, and there was a lovely 928 S4, and then a bunch of air-cooled stuff. Driving like absolute dicks at 40 miles an hour. Mm. It takes a special breed of Porsche-weenie to barely be able to go, or to not even be able to attain the minimum speed on a highway, and still almost all fucking crash into each other. So I am very glad I didn't go to that event or support anyone, because I was very cross at the people who almost fucking killed me while I was just trying to get home from work. So at least Volkswagen events, we drive like assholes at outrageous speeds. I want triple digits, weaving, felonious misdemeanor, fucking actual violence, and not a bunch of people sitting in like blocking 5 lanes of freeway going 40 miles an hour just because they're so self-absorbed Porsche assholes. Continue.
Well, that concludes episode number 9.
That concludes my career. No, it's just fun to do that.
The event is put on at a beautiful venue. It's a very cool event. It was worth going. I was sort of on the fence about whether I should go.
Was this the first Northern California Luftgekühlt?
I believe so,
okay.
Yes. Otherwise, I probably would have gone to one in the past. That's been the historic issue for me, is I don't want to go all the way to Southern California to look at these cars. And like a few people were from the East Coast and Europe even were there for the event.
Ship their cars out or?
No, they shipped their person out via airplane. I guess we call that flying out.
Yeah.
And so it was well done. I've been to a number of car events. I thought it was well organized. Generally, the venue was really neat. The thing about this that differentiates it, I think, is that normally when you go to a car event, especially one of this scale, I mean, I don't know how many cars there were. It seemed like 500, honestly. A lot of cars. It's just a big parking lot with cars in it, and like even Radwood is sort of like this in some form. But what they did here, which was very neat, was that they put cars in lots of different places, and there was this sort of constant experience of discovery where you go into some building or something, and then you're like, oh, there's a bunch of cars in here. And you go down some alley, and there's a bunch of, or a single car down there highlighted in a neat way. It was a very neat space, and they sort of curated the experience quite well. And so it wasn't tiresome the way walking back and forth the parking lot all day is. So credit for that. I thought logistics, considering the number of people there, were decent. Not amazing, but pretty decent. I mean, considering the complexity, I thought it was pretty good.
Okay, back up though. So you talked about the venue, but it was on Mare Island, which is
an old naval base.
Okay.
And so there's all these like very neat warehouses, and there was a submarine con tower and cranes and stuff. It's a really visually striking place to interact with
I
cars.
saw some of the pictures on social media, and they look like they were using indoor spaces and outdoor spaces. Okay, that's pretty cool because to your point, that's not what you typically see from a car show.
That was probably the highlight of the whole thing. And I know that food and bathrooms are always an issue, and there was like not great, but not the worst I've experienced. So, considering, and just huge volumes of humans. I mean, this was the thing that most surprised me is that the newest air-cooled car is 25 years old. If I've done the math right. 98. Yes. 25 years old. And, you think of it as being an old car, and then you see the sheer number of humans who are into this stuff, and you're just like, that's a shitload of people who are interested in air-cooled
interested
cars.
Enough to spend $100 a ticket?
Yeah, I guess.
Mean, what was the general admission?
I don't know what general admission was. But
of course, I don't know what general admission was.
Well, no, I had to go early because my car was arriving early. So
I'm trying to make fun of you. Stop defending yourself.
Okay, I will just...
Porsche-weenie.
Yeah, this is the problem. Porsche-weenie incarnate. I love Porsches. I love the experience they provide, but I much rather, and this is, reinforce this is why I haven't bothered to go in the past. I would much rather drive a Porsche than watch them be static. And Porsche people are generally great. There's variability, just like any part of the culture, but there's, the landscape has changed a lot. 20 years ago, there was a very specific group of people who were doing this, and a lot of them are still around, but there's a new generation of enthusiasts. And so I cannot fault the fact that there is a concept out here that is relevant for a new generation of people. Mm-hmm. One of the things that does offend me is, let's see, when you have 500 copies of the same damn car, people seek to express themselves through the car. And sometimes this goes very well, and there is some spectacular stuff, and other times, like good R group builds are like this, and then other times you get these like sort of tropes or memes of cars where people are like, everybody's doing this, so I will do it too. Roof racks. Everybody gloms onto this one thing. They're like, this is super cool. I got to put a roof rack on my car. I got to put the clear lens projector headlights on an air-cooled 911, or I got to, whatever the thing is, I got to put a snarky license plate, custom license plate about how my car is air-cooled or whatever. It's like Tesla license plate that say like, fuck you OPEC or whatever it is.
No gas,
yeah, whatever Tesla, there's just this sort of culture of like, I don't know if it's douchery or what, but there's this sort of like assumption of an identity instead of in an effort to individualize their cars. They are all doing the same thing, and it is the opposite of individuality, and it is not, in my opinion, in good taste. And this is all very sort of judgmental, and I'm sure I will get crucified, but
I'm sitting here worrying about all the terrible things I said, mostly in joking about the crowd of people on the highway, and now you're like digging your own grave.
I know, and this is one person's perspective, and I'm having it based on the experiences that I've had in my own perspective. But what I like about I believe in individuality. I don't think everything should be left totally stock. And that's another end of the Porsche-weenie thing that I don't care for, is where people are like, but the stitching on your seatbelts is yellow and the car was built in March of 73, so it should have this sticker on the engine and not that one because they switched in March of 73. And, people get really into arcane details, and they get really into like I had a customer who had a Carrera RS, and he said, I don't drive this car without first running the route immediately before in another car in case there's construction or gravel on the road or water dripping across the road. He, to be fair, spent like 800 hours doing the undercarriage of the car, like body work on the floor pan of the car. Car was spectacular, but how is that fun? I guess it's something that perfectionists do for fun. And I guess that's what turns him on. And that's fine, honestly. It's just not for me. And, Ferdinand Porsche famously, maybe not so famously at one point, said the saddest thing is that my car should be sitting around being polished instead of being, covered in dirt after doing 24-hour endurance races, or that the car should, and like I washed my car before because it was filthy. And then I was like, I shouldn't have washed my car before bringing it here, like just as an act of defiance, because there's this sort of like, these people who are like, it must be stock, it must be perfect, it must be cleaner and better than it was new, and it's like, that's very tragic, but also I think problematic. So I'm just shitting on everyone effectively. No, I mean this
show is called the Carmudgeon Show.
Yes, and I am full on Carmudgeoning right now.
Both of us.
But what I believe is the way where when I see it, and every 1 in 20 cars or whatever it is at this event, and I see it, I'm just like, holy shit, that is sensational. And the thing that pushes me to the like, holy shit, that's sensational, is if a car is done in a way that reflects the way that it would have been done in period. Like it's individualized, but there's a consciousness of the way that people did things at a certain time or place, and there's this sort of awareness of where they're like, yes, I've drawn this from this place or that place, and you have to, if you know, and also like a lot of experience and learning behind it, instead of just being like, oh, I saw that looks cool on the internet, I'm going to do that. It's like, no, the reason why this is like this is because of X or Y, and you have to sort of, there's some element of bothering to take the trouble to go really deep and learn the subject really well, and then use that information to inform your decision. There's this guy who does really wonderful builds where the average person would walk by and be like, oh, it's another 911. But if then you like look at the car and you're just like, holy shit, it's got this, and it's got this, and he did that, and you're just like, my God. Well,
but to be honest, Singer does kind of that, right? To sort of look, you'll look at a Singer and you'll immediately know it's a Singer. Most of the general population of car enthusiasts will look at a Singer car and just say, wow, that's a hot Porsche, that's beautiful, because all of the things that are done in such a way that they could have maybe been done in period with no expense.
Not to me. It's too modern. It's a collision of aesthetics.
Okay.
Right,
but you know better.
If you look at it from far enough, you're like, it's a 70s car, but immediately you're like, the wheels are too big. Fuchs were never produced in 17 or 18 inches or whatever size they are. And there's you can just see the sidewall, tire sidewalls and wheels alone is all it takes to identify that. I also just object fundamentally to the cutting up of 964s, because they didn't sell very many of those cars, and they are, I think, some of the best 911s ever made. And it's tragic to see those cars. If the car's going to be scrapped, cool. But, and I heard stories about someone, I think it was a 964 RS, which is probably, if I could choose one 911 and could only have one 911, that would probably be the one I would choose, the 964 RS. And he sent it to Singer to be singered. And they were like, we really don't want to do this. Are you absolutely sure? And the guy's like, yes, you have to do it to this car. And they were like, oh, God. And like, so that to me is heart-wrenching. And, if it's a Tiptronic car that's got 400 million miles and a salvage title, like, sure. But I know that not every car that they're doing that to is one of those. And I object to that, because you can't get those cars back once you do that to them. And so, the demand for their product was so high because they created something that obviously resonated with such a large number of people that there were good cars that fate was, happening to, which is, too bad. So I don't know. I would rather see that car get returned to its original 964 state than turned into a Singer. I mean, we all know someone who bought a Tiptronic and converted to a 6-speed manual. Like that's a 964, and like that's the way to
do we all know
that.
someone?
I mean, all three of us in the room know the same person who did that to his Wimbledon Green 964 that was a Tiptronic, and he converted to a 6-speed manual. Right. And so, yeah, sorry.
Don't you think
he's inside the room?
Let me play devil's advocate a second. Don't
Yes,
you think there's
do.
one person who would say they shouldn't have converted that from Tiptronic? That was a period piece that was correct at the time, and that was where the standard of automatic technology was. In fact, that was the first Tiptronic. That was a world break, sort of a new thing that started the whole trend in the world.
A manumatic shifter, and Porsche invented that.
And by replacing that with a manual, you're destroying a piece of history. Obviously, I don't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, and then you drive it and you're just like, fuck. Yeah.
But what about that guy who lost his left leg in a horrible boating accident?
Well, there's at least one Tiptronic. No, that's a fair point. Yeah. That's a fair point. I guess I also feel it's a lot easier to revert to a transmission than it is to unsinger a car that's been singered. You cannot unsinger a car that's been singered. I mean, it's got a new body that's carbon fiber, I think. I think it's carbon fiber. Assume it's carbon fiber.
Some of the panels. Yeah.
So yeah, you can't unsinger a singer. But so that's my perspective. I believe that ultimately, but going to an event where these cars are on display is cool because you get to hang out with the people. For me, I don't care to see 500 of the same damn car over and over again. Obviously, they're not the same damn car. I say that fully tongue in cheek. Mm-hmm. Tongue was just in cheek for those who are not watching.
I don't think that's never mind. Christ.
Okay. So, but yes, I mean,
Paolo's
for the community
still laughing, by the way. So somebody
like in a sort of like eye rolling, like I might pull a muscle.
No,
for
he's just
my
high.
Eye.
He's high, so it's funny.
So like it's fun to hang out with people who are into cars, but like there's so much aggro with all the humans running around. Anyway, ultimately I adore these cars. I love driving them, and I'm glad that there's enthusiasm for them and that they're getting saved and that they're not falling by the wayside like Citroëns, for example, or whatever it is. Right. So what is your hypothesis about why this is such a mainstream thing? I was really surprised to see the large numbers of people who are into this shit.
To be honest, I wish I would have gone. I wish I would have been able to go, especially day two, because day two was a mix of water-cooled and air-cooled stuff, and I think that's probably more interesting. I've only owned two Porsches, and they were both water-cooled, and they're both the sort of lost generation 996, 986. I bought them because of the way they drove, and I no longer have any Porsches because they don't line up with what I need as a special experience. Mm-hmm. In that sense, Porsche has been a victim of its own success for me personally, in that these cars are too good to be that much of an experience, and I don't necessarily want them because I want cars that light my hair on fire, and these cars typically don't.
This is why I'm an air-cooled guy.
No, I'm talking about air-cooled stuff too.
I don't think they're too good.
I think they're too refined and too good, and not it right out of the box. Given the price point, they're not spicy enough.
Yeah,
that's
true.
For what I want
out of the box.
Right.
But you have heavily modified cars.
Some don't. I mean, the 2316 is a nut job, and that's a Mercedes that out of the box is a nice car and is a psychopath once you're on a back road, and I love that about it. But Porsche, to me, the reason I don't want it is they're too good of cars. And I think Porsche in the air-cooled stuff is also a victim of its own success, right? I make fun of air-cooled 911 buyers and drivers all the time, and mostly just to rag on you. But the reality is it's the obvious choice.
Yes. Because
they're so goddamn good. And that means that if you either, and this is the insulting way of saying this, have a distinct lack of originality, or put it in a positive way, you just don't want to deal with flawed, fucked up bullshit, and you just want a car that works. It's so easy to stumble on an air-cooled 911 or an air-cooled Porsche overall. And so I respect the hell out of those cars for that. And joking aside, I respect the hell out of anyone's decision to go buy an old 911. I encourage it. They're not for me because the one that I would want is unattainable financially.
Yeah. You have to modify your way to success.
Right. Even your car is so fucking well sorted, and it's so good that I don't want to invest that much money in it.
Yes. And to be honest, actually, when I bought that car back, I was looking for a different 911, and then the guy that I bought the car from offered me such a good deal, and I knew the cars well, so to the extent that I was just like, okay, I buy my own car back. But what I was really looking for was a torsion bar car. The cars without power steering, the cars without ABS. Right. Not that those particular things, but lack of power steering. But the ABS, I mean, if you could get an
I would rather have
ABS,
it.
I would rather have it.
Always.
But the older ones are a little more wacko. You've had enough experiences in those wacko cars where you're like, this is and that was what I was looking for.
I kind of want a Carrera 3.2 motor swapped into. No, I want a carved car. I just want an early car because they were so dainty and pretty in that 1960s way where everything was not plastic and shit. And it was just every little piece was a piece of art. And then the cars are rolly, they're floppy. The motor is dragging you around every corner from the back. Yes. That is an experience, but that's an experience I can't afford.
I mean, there are under $100,000, which is a dumb number to say now because I know because that number used to be like $40,000 would get you to the place of like magical dialed in.
This was always every time I've looked to shop for a 911, I've stumbled on something that is an order of magnitude more fun at half or a quarter of the price. I've never spent, the most I've ever spent on a car in my life is $41,000. My top 4 cars are 41, 40, 39, 5. And those are all cars that were investments long-term and I did okay on. And the next one down is the minivan at 22. I don't spend a lot of money on cars. Most of them are between most of them have been between $1,500 and $6,000. So I'm an exception and I understand I don't have the money to spend on cars. I just advised someone, it was a friend of a friend. I was visiting a friend and a friend of his came over. And there was this purplish red, amazingly cool colored Carrera 3.2 on Bring a Trailer. And he was like, what do I do? I've been on the fence about this for years. I've tried everything else. Like, I just want an air-cooled 911 and I want a Carrera 3.2 or an SC and I just need it to happen. And they're just getting more and more and more expensive. And my wife keeps saying, no, what do I do? And this car is pretty rough around the edges. But it just looks so fucking cool. And he bought it. And it was $70,000. And I think, he got it home and the only one thing that I heard, 2 things that I heard. First is, wow, it's a lot rougher than we thought from the Bring a Trailer thing. And number 2, he's absolutely in love with it. And that was what I'd hoped for him, right? Somebody spent $70,000 is a lot of money to spend on a car, even if it's an investment. And I think it'll hold that $70,000. So you're laying out a shit ton of money. And as his one and only sort of special car in a geographical location where he is, where it's mostly flat and the roads are big, wide and open and everything's quick, fine. That car works. And I think that's wonderful. But for $70,000, I had my Lotus and my Ferrari.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, each of those is a better experience than the Carrera 3.2. Sorry, not a better experience. Each of those is more of an experience. And so I can't blame somebody who doesn't want to deal with a Ferrari that's got a timing belt service that's due, or an Elise that if you look at the wrong way, you have a $25,000 clamshell repair. I understand it. But if you can deal with that because it's your second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th car, whatever, sure. There's just a better way to enjoy your money. And that's why Porsche is a victim of its success. It's everyone who's got their only one car. And the problem is ownership of those cars is pleasant. Yes. They're reliable. They're easy to deal with.
There's lots of people who know a lot about those cars. The parts availability is really good. If you want to modify stuff, you can do that easily. And everybody's answered the question before.
Exactly. And so it winds up being a wonderful ownership experience, which is a good thing until you become a Porsche-weenie. Because now you're so encamped in this Porsche is better than everything else that you never get to experience anything else.
Yeah.
You have everything from Citroens to Mercedes-Benzes to Italian cars you've everything across the board. And you've experienced almost every car produced from the year of your birth in 1904 till whatever. So you can enjoy the true greatness, inherent greatness of your 964. But someone who's never owned anything else and has only ever had one classic car and loves their Porsche because it's such a great experience and it's so easy to live with and whatever else is missing out on so much amazing shit.
Yeah.
That's flawed and not as good, but amazing.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't clear my schedule to go to a single-marque show like Luftgekühlt. All the jokes about the traffic that happened, I really was pissed off at everyone. But we've all been, on a highway with a bunch of friends, maybe not considering that there are other people on the highway doing, trying to just commute. But it was just annoying to me that there was this unbelievably gorgeous 928 S4 that was going 40 miles an hour up a hill. I'm like, you have more torque available at the wheels in 6th gear than I do in 1st. Use it.
Yeah.
Use it, you fucking Porsche-weenie. And it was so pretty because it was like a purple color. It was so gorgeous. And it was an S4 so with the taillights and whatever. But I just want to take all those people and say, great. Mommy, wow, I'm a big kid now. Go buy something Italian and broken. Or go buy something British and on electrical fire. Or go buy something American and just genuinely awful. But
and fear for your life.
Yeah, but big burbly V8 that's fucking unhinged and just doesn't have any traction and just puts a fucking smile on your face. Yeah. Because your Porsche is just too goddamn good.
Well, yeah, and I guess the question is, what kind of drivers are they, and what kind of experiences do they like? Or
40 miles an hour, 5 lanes across, not paying attention to anyone else because they're now part of the thing with the roof rack and the fucking wheels and the projector headlights and all the rest of the stuff, and they don't know how to drive their own goddamn cars. They were holding up Priuses, Derek Tam-Scott.
Okay, that's never allowed. Actually, that's always allowed, but only retributively.
I was waiting to see how you get out of that. I love getting to play the angriest version of myself, especially when it's aimed at people who are going to post comments.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, the best 911s are probably from the 60s and 70s in terms of experience. But in stock form, they are a little bit soft and squishy.
No,
and
that's a good thing.
Yeah, it can be.
Depends on
unless it comes at the expense of control.
Fine. I mean, okay, look. The cars have a widowmaker reputation for a reason, and it's because you need to learn how to drive. You need to know how to do it.
If you know what you're doing, then it's actually fine. That's 100% true. But those are the experiences. And if, like I said, if I had not happened across the 911 that I currently own, I was looking for a 70s, impact bumper car that was set up well. And to me, that is an inimitable experience. And I do look forward to you driving a 73 Carrera RS because I think you will like it. It is, the vintage visceralness of an old 911 with a genuine pace level that is swift. I mean, my butt dyno says that car does 0 to 60 in the low 5s. Jesus I genuinely, but it still has that 70s wildness to it. And the MFI, the mechanical fuel injection, you don't need carbs. I think MFI is a good alternative to carbs in terms of the engine experience that you get.
And noise, right? There's nothing to muffle the intake on that. Is it?
There's 6 velocity stacks that go into an air box. Then there's like a cylindrical air filter. And then that intake is on the other side of that. Yeah. They make wonderful noises. So, I mean, it is everything I think that you would like in a 911. And,
but how much money?
Well, yeah, you can build a good replica of one for,
a house,
regular 911 money, which is to say $100,000.
Yeah. I mean, I came close to buying an SC years ago
and
when
those
they were in the
like
25
$15,000 to $20,000 window, and I miss those days because I could just fuck around with them the way I do with anything else, in a way that was sort of like this is super fun, and like it was that is tragic, and I miss that because the experience of an old 911, especially a torsion bar 911. This is before 964, the G-body, not 930. People always call those cars 930s. 930s are only the turbos. They're really fun to drive. There's just the manual, like no weight on the front wheel steering rack is just this wonderful, talkative experience. And I think it's one of the benchmarks of car steering. Mm-hmm. And
I'd agree.
The fact that you can't do that anymore for 15 or, I stretched and bought one that was 19 and a half because it had an $8,000 engine refresh recently. Ooh. And so I, paid up for, and, these things are all now out of reach for the enthusiasts who are like, okay, I'm like post Miata or post $7,500 E36 M3, and I'm interested in something a little more wacko. That next step used to be a 911 SC or 964s were that cheap, 996s are now still in the 20s.
And 996s are 20s. Pretty good experiences.
Yeah. I mean, like that's an experience that's worth having.
Yeah.
In terms like that, or what I mean by that is that the cost of that experience it maps
Matches
pretty
up to the
well
right.
to the experience you get in terms of like interestingness and fun and novelty, you know, in the way that air-cooled cars did when they were cheap.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's all these developments that happen, and you know, I did this thing that, and you're actually your boss at Haggerty, I guess, and he who was responsible for the podcast was like, you should do an episode about this, because I was like, how can I out Porsche-weenie, the Porsche-weenies? And so I went around posting photos of license plates and license plate frames and critiquing them on the basis of whether they were correctly presented, because it's like, what could be more inane than like calling people out on license plates, because all these people are so, you know, like, no, it must be perfect and it must be very clean and it must be this and that. And so, you know, I went down this rabbit hole of license plate correctness, because
I did not see this. I mean, I saw that there was a text thread, but but I didn't actually see. You're gonna have to post all these.
No, I'm not gonna post all of them. I might post one.
Okay.
But there's a, you know, this is a separate topic.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, you should do an episode about license plates. And I was like, are you mass unsubscribe? Can anyone say mass unsubscribe? I think,
you know, yeah, that's the problem. You go to a single-marque car show and you're left to critique people on license plates.
Yes.
It's honestly what I love about Radwood.
Yes.
Because, you know, remember there was a couple years ago, there was what the hell's that? The Moreno. What the hell?
Oh, Matra.
Matra.
Matra Bagheera, or
no. The Moreno was the 3-seat.
Yeah, isn't that the same thing?
Is it?
I think the Bagheera is the 3-seat car where you all sit in a row next to each other.
Bagheera? No, it was a. God damn it! I have pictures of this.
I think it's a Matra Bagheera.
Whatever.
Paolo,
it was.
can you do a quick internet check and see if the Matra Bagheera is a 3-seater?
Yeah, but that's not what was there. It was, but it was.
There was
it
another car
Talbot.
called
I thought it was just Talbot.
It might have been a badge engineer thing for all I know.
Whatever it was, but there's something that you've never seen before.
Yes.
No one. I've thought about doing a Revelations on it, but unfortunately, I have to consider the fact that no one would watch that.
Yes.
But I think that car's local. If I get a hold of it, I might try to find some research on it. But that is a batshit weird 3-seat across 2-door coupe with a mid-engine. It's got a Fiat motor in the back or something. I don't know
anything about it.
Exactly. That's so cool. I want to go to a car show and be like, oh my God, is that a Geo Metro XFI convertible in Smurf shit blue with 8,000 miles on it in perfect condition? I haven't seen one of those.
Yeah.
And then really go get to experience all these different things where the last thing I'm looking for is a license plate.
Yes. And this is, you know, there is a progression or not progression, as you pointed out. If some people never get outside of the tent, you know?
Yeah.
And this is the way I always contextualize Citroëns, and I'm sure we will have at some point a Citroën discussion on the Carmudgeon Show.
Once maybe yours runs
maybe
again.
once mine. Matra Bagheera. Yeah, it's 3 with is the driver
but
in the
which
middle,
one?
or is the
What's
driver is it the car is a Matra Bagheera?
No, it's Talbot Moreno.
It might be a badge engineered version of the same thing.
Whatever the fuck.
We are exposing the outer limits of our knowledge right now.
But nobody knows. The people who made this car don't even remember it. It doesn't exist. And
so
they were very high.
That's probably true. That's the
driver on the left.
Driver's on the left. So there's 2 passengers, a center passenger and a right.
And the car
passenger.
that you're talking about is a center steerer.
No. The one I was talking about, the Matra Bagheera.
Yeah. But why would that? What the hell is a Matra?
It's like a pickup. Sorry, you were sorry. I thought you were saying, why would you have not put the driver in the middle?
Yeah, no.
I understand,
but yeah, why would you badge engineer? I'm so confused by this whole thing. But that's the point,
right? To get those sort of weird experiences, and that's what I love about Citroëns. I mean, the Citroën is like, you've had enough vanilla sex, and now they're ready to go to Folsom Street Fair. Right? That's what Citroëns are about, or Matra Bagheeras, right? Yeah. You're like 911s and 280 SL Pagodas, and choose sort of regular like default choice, right, classic car. And then you've experienced all that. Now you're ready for something different. If you have the imagination and the interest and the willingness to wander off the reservation and do a little peyote or whatever it is you're going to do, like there's a whole wide world out there that's worth experiencing. That said, I think I will probably always want to own an air-cooled 911 just because it always functions. But the thing that I do with that car is not to take it to Porsche-weenie shows. It's like I go
drive
it
Yeah.
when there's nobody else around, ideally, so no one can see me.
Being a Porsche weenie. Nobody can see your weenie.
It's well known that I like those cars, but to me, a lot of the value is the experience.
It's experience, absolutely.
And doing something where you're not experiencing the car instead of experiencing it, to me, is not as good.
Listen, for everything that I've said about single-marque shows, I have certainly done Legends of the Autobahn, which is 3-marque show.
Yes, that's
definitely been to BMW shows, but
4.
Technically, it's
is there no VW?
No VW.
Oh, VW
but I showed my Scirocco there last year, or 2 years ago, just to be a pain in the ass. But I did
Legends of the
Waterfest.
Autobahn, by the way, this year. We must talk about vintage Mercedes at least once in every Carmudgeon episode. This is the time.
The 90th birthday,
the 90th birthday of Bruno Sacco.
I guess I'm bringing the Mercedes to Monterey this year.
Yeah, I would like to bring the wagon, but
your dog-leg purple wagon?
Yes.
We can have double dog legs at Legends of the Autobahn.
Oh, yeah. It's probably the same gearbox. We could switch the gearboxes and then drive them down and then switch them back afterwards, just for the joy of it.
Double dog switch gearbox.
But I was also but I could also be driving around Car Week in a Citroën, and then it's like, this is an intriguing proposition.
I was supposed to bring the Beat. I have a Beat admission. Okay, I'm really dumb. Let's make this very clear. I thought Japan used years the way we use years. So on my Honda Beat, it has a little sticker, and I use Google Translate, and it tells me that year, day, month for the timing belt, and the year is 12, and the day and month or whatever else. That doesn't mean the timing belt was done in 2012. That means the timing belt was done 12 years after the new emperor took over, because that's the way years are written there. I have a fucking 23-year-old timing belt in my Honda Beat. You know what's never getting driven again?
The Honda Beat.
I won't even start it.
Ugh.
I'm going to have to transport it to my warehouse, which now has a lift in it, which I haven't even talked about yet, to do a belt on it. I'm scared to death to start. 23-year-old.
How many RPM did you hit the last time you drove the car?
8,600. I hit the limiter. I've hit the limiter every time I drive that car. Well, not maybe the limiter, but at least $8,000 every time I do. 23-year-old timing belt. I'm so scared shitless.
It's a Honda. It'll be fine.
Fuck. No, it won't. It's a very interference.
Very interference. It's not in binary. It's actually a continuum.
But while we're talking about Hondas, I went to every Volkswagen only show that I was able to go to when I was, I was 22 when I got 21 or 22 when I got the Scirocco. It was my baby. It was my firstborn. It was the world's most amazing car. I still love it, obviously. But I went to Waterfest every year, which was water-cooled Volkswagens only. So it's very much a parallel to Luftgekühlt. So you have Luftgekühlt is air-cooled, and then Waterfest. And then H2O International, which was another East Coast Volkswagen show. H2O is in water-cooled Volkswagens. And when I got there in 1997, it was all Mark 1s, Mark 2s, and Mark 3s were the current car. I stopped going, as did everyone I know, when Mark 4 happened, because the turbo cars, the 1.8T, really changed the landscape for what Volkswagen became. But I went to those shows, even though there was a lineup of Scirocco 16 valves, which, they only made maybe 10,000 of them for the US. There'd still be 20 of them there at some of these shows, but I went for the people. And while I was there, I could make fun of, so-and-so's car, and we all know them. I mean, one of them, Tom Park, is a guy that, that lives in the Bay Area, and he's got a car that everyone thinks is mine all the time. Poor Tom.
So every time he goes out, people are like, "It's Jason Cammisa."
He's like, "This is the most disappointing car I've ever owned," because every time I get out of it, people are like, "Oh," because they think it's me. But my car's twin, and I took one look at it, and I said, "Oh my God, that's Jan's old car." And he's like, "How did you know that? He was 2 owners ago, right?" Well, this guy Jan and I met in 1998 at Waterfest, and we've been friendly ever since. And I knew his car, and then it got sold to another friend of ours, and then it got sold. Now here it is, and so I see him at events, and it's awesome. Ultimately, I can make fun of Porsche-weenies all the time, but they are,
it's community that is exactly uniting them, and they're all speaking the same language, and they've found their people, and they have a community and a sort of sense of shared identity, and that is not to be discounted. And if you go through your list of friends, I can only ask, but I can say, if I would go through my list of friends, how many of them did I meet through a sort of single marque car culture where we both have the same mark of car?
It's most of them.
Yeah, I know.
So
and it's like I have a whole group of friends who are like 124, 129 owners.
Yeah,
or
you've
Mercedes.
particularly gone down the Bruno Sacco era of everyone
it's
you know.
Because air-cooled 911s got so expensive, right? I can just sort of float in and out and do transactions with Bruno Sacco cars because they're still so cheap, and I can't do that with air-cooled Porsches anymore. I got priced out even though I own one.
Do you hang out with Mura people?
No, God, no.
Do the Mura people hang out, or are they just in the infirmary?
Yes.
Or they're at hospice care? I need my car caught on fire again.
Or yes, exactly. They're exactly
in the burn ward.
In the burn ward is just like 43% Mura owners.
Oh my god! I mean, the VW community. I'm very saddened. There's the 25th and final Scirocco Cruisin'. One of the first things I did...
They declared it was the final.
It's the final. So one of the first things I did, when I got my car in June of 97, in June of 98, there was a show that was put together in Cincinnati by a bunch of guys there. And over the next couple of years, it sort of became fully formed. My buddy Don, who again, I met because of Scirocco on Scirocco.org, which was not yet a forum. It was a mailing list. It was a listserv. So you used to be able to... It was before we all chipped in and bought the domain for like $5 because we all had to chip in to get to $5 together. It was Scirocco-L at... Somebody in the comments is going to say, God, you send an email to that list and it went to everyone. And then it became Scirocco-L at Scirocco.org. And I think my car is still in a profile on Scirocco.org because I was one of the quote unquote founders. But all of us became really good friends. We were all over the country. Mm-hmm. And we would get together once a year at Don's parents' house in Ohio. And they their house backed up to an airport, like a little tiny private airport. They built the house specifically there because they were and are plane people.
Yeah.
So we would often occasionally absolutely never do little runs down the runway and have a little bit of fun. We'd always arrange the cars on the grass to say something and then go up in a plane and take pictures of it. So one year we did a VW symbol. One year we did a Scirocco. One year I think we wrote out Scirocco.org. We had that many cars. My 20th anniversary with my car was June 7th, 2017. And it happened that same weekend was the 20th Scirocco Cruisin'. And so 20 years, I'm like, I'm doing this. And so I drove cross country to that. I quit Motor Trend and I think it was a week later, I built the motor, put it in, did 12-mile run, dumped the oil, put fresh oil in, and drove from California to Ohio. It was the best trip I've ever taken in the U.S. And these people have all become my friends. We're all in each other's weddings, and they all have kids now, and some of their kids are starting to get into old Volkswagens. It's so cool, and I want to go to see my friends. I would love to have my car there, but I'm absolutely not taking 4 days to drive to Ohio and back, and then 4 days to drive back, but I may well fly out. And so the thing that I don't want to discount about shows like Luftgekühlt or Waterfest or any of these single-marque anything is the friends that you will make, whether you will keep, I'm still friends on Facebook with Jan Folks, and sorry, Jan, if I outed you as a previous Scirocco owner, the first owner of Thomas Park's Mark 1, and it's now 25 years later, and we all still know each other, and we all still keep dibs on each other, and we all see each other when the time comes. And that, at the end of the day, is really the best part of car community.
Okay, well, then if you are air-cooled Porscheing, then I guess you'd better start making friends, which I have done. That's is true. That is true. So there's community that comes with it. And ultimately, like I said, the experience of driving the car is really a pleasure. And so, people get really into the innate. Like I can look at a 911.
I can't even tell you what short wheelbase from a long wheelbase. You took me to a guide years ago, and you were like, "This is what you look for short versus long." And I'm like, "Can I just look for the longer wheelbase?" And you're like, "You can't really tell. You got to know how much."
You have to see the amount of space between the jacking point cover and the wheel arch.
Yeah, but one's like 3 inches and one's 3.75. It's a fucking.
The taillights are different. They changed the gauges in 68 and the door handles in 6, and you can tell if it's a 69. I mean, there's all these little things, and I can't imagine there's appetite for this, but I can look at a Porsche from pretty much any year up through the 993-ish, and I can tell you within 1 to 2 years what year it is, because they change something almost every year throughout the period, and I've trained people how to do this. You look at that, that's definitively a 69. The 69 you cannot mistake for any other year. 70, 71 look the same, 72, 73 are different. There's everything, if you know what to look for, you can tell them all apart. So, that's a
You too
fun
can
trick.
be your own Google.
Borderline Asperger's-y or whatever, like me.
Borderline.
Sorry. Deep into the territory.
Deep into the red zone.
And tell these things apart. And, that's
okay. That's
amusing,
totally okay.
I guess. But ultimately, yes, it's the experience in the community. And so as frustrating as it is to experience, and my hope is that people who are just getting into this eventually immerse themselves in a way where they pass through the other side and stop doing dumb shit, and maybe sort of
dumb shit to
the
their cars.
Yeah, dumb shit to their cars.
Sorry. That's never going to happen. People are always going to do dumb shit. But the reality is, as long as they're trying to be individual.
It's your car. You can do whatever you want to it, of course, and I don't have to like it. I'm not some great arbiter of anything. But
it makes Derek happy when you do it with genuine thought and layers of understanding and information that's informing your decisions of what to mod when.
Correct.
Look, we all did the same thing. I modded the shit.
That's what I object to about Magnus Walker's cars. It's just
They're
a
not
sort
done
of
with a reference to history.
There's just this sort of discordant collection of changes to make changes, and they're not particularly subtle or elegant in their execution. But people react very positively to his cars. It's just not for me.
People react very positively to Camrys. I mean, there's not one thing that's
you're
good,
100% right.
Good cars, but just because the masses sort of like something doesn't necessarily mean
it doesn't mean it's for me.
The problem with you and your borderline Asperger knowledge about this stuff is you're coming from a place of incredible knowledge, so you can understand the references and the subtleties of stuff. And I don't think most people immerse themselves to that point in the car. I wish they would on their own cars, but then the trap is then you become that Porsche-weenie.
Yes, and that's why
knows about that car.
I love meeting people who know that level of knowledge about some car that I don't know as much about, because then I'm like, I want to learn all that stuff, and it's very interesting to me. Generally, depending what the car is.
Listen, it doesn't matter to me. I have covered cars for Revelations that I have no interest at all whatsoever. Every single time when you start delving in,
yes, no matter what it is, C4 Corvette. I mean,
that was so cool. I didn't realize that Lotus built that fucking engineered and built that fucking, well, technically Mercury Marine built that engine. Mm-hmm. There was so much unbelievable shit on a Corvette C4 that was just also ran in every way.
Right. And even remains that way if you look at the values today. Yeah. That there's still like a fantastic one is like with 12 miles on it is 75 grand. Right. And like an average 30,000 mile car is like 30 grand or 40 grand for one of those.
I don't even know.
They're
but
cheap.
Here's the thing. The ZR1 was obviously the king of the hill, and it was a top spec, and it was all that other stuff. But in my research, I was thinking, wow, the ZR1 absolutely had a separate story. I probably could have filled almost a whole episode with just C4 because of all the changes that they had to make over C3, because C3 wasn't profitable, and they raised the price of C3 5 times in 1 year once because they were trying to push and push and push and push, thinking that they would find the limit of what the price was in this car, because GM was going to kill the Corvette after C3. So what? You can't kill the Corvette. Don't be absurd.
And it's the world's longest running. Okay, Chevrolet Suburban. Certainly the world's longest running sports car.
Right. And I just last week saw a Mazda MX-6. It was just street parked, and it was kind of in okay condition. But I'm like, wow, when was the last time you saw an MX-6/Probe? I wonder what the story is behind that car. Oh, except hold on, that was supposed to kill the Mustang. The Probe was the replacement for the Mustang. Every one of these cars.
So no matter where you look, there is an interesting story. And meeting the people who have the knowledge is always a treat, because then you're just like,
best thing in the world. Best thing in the world. I did another episode, and we'll end here because I think we're up at time. But I did another episode together with
your bladder's
Dino.
Full. You were drinking coffee before.
On Tesla Roadster. So I did a Revelations on that, and no books have been written that I looked.
So you got to talk to the humans.
I got to talk to the peoples.
Yeah,
it was so cool. I mean, first of all, the owners themselves are like super nerds on these cars. But I then wrote the script after talking to a whole bunch of people who were there. Yeah. They were like, we fucked this up, we fucked this up, we fucked this up. And the coolest part about it is every single person I spoke to owns one. Even if they couldn't afford one back in the day. One of the guys bought one with a bad battery and just parked it and said, one day I will be able to afford a battery and put it in. And he did. All of them still have those cars. What a cool thing to do, to talk about someone who was, to talk about a car with the people who were there and watched Elon pulling his hair out trying to get that thing into production and watched Lotus fight them every step along the way. Oh, that episode. I can't wait. I
can't wait to see it. Then those cars, we sold one recently, not recently, but 2 years ago maybe. And I got absolutely bum rushed. Never has that ever happened to me with interest in that car. Really? So many people were interested to buy that car. Like the number of inquiries was quite literally, not exaggerating. This is not hyperbole, 100 inquiries. And we sold the car, immediately at the asking price, which was obviously too low since there were so many people interested in it. But literally 100 inquiries. God. I've never experienced any car that I've listed that generated as much interest as it was a late Roadster, one owner, cosmetically fucked, but 10,000 miles and priced in accordance with its cosmetic condition, which excited a lot of people.
That is really interesting. The one that I drove was a reddish orange, not a stock color, but it was repainted in that color by the original owner. And I can't think of another car. It's in the top 5, certainly, of cars that got attention. And I mean, I'm talking like Audi R8, when you first came out, you couldn't drive it. You got run off the road immediately because everyone was staring at it. Like, genuine spaceship for the road. But I don't think anything that is currently 10 or 12 years old.
Are you talking about when they were new?
No, now.
Now?
I was talking about last week.
When you were driving around in it.
I drove it back to the owner, and I almost got run over 4 times by people trying to take videos and pictures and screaming. Of course, people are dumb. I got accused of being in a Lotus. Could you take that, convert that Lotus to electric?
It must be the color. Because I was driving around in a silver one and nobody gave a shit.
That's so weird.
I probably drove it 20 or 30 minutes and nobody gave a shit.
Everywhere I went. Thumbs up, the honks. Color. I mean, photos everywhere.
Must have been the color.
Yeah, must have been.
I was driving a silver one, and not one response. Or I was completely out to lunch while driving, which is inadvisable.
Were you drunk again?
No, I
make that joke because you would never drive drunk.
Yes,
have you ever been drunk?
Yes, of course. I'm drunk right now. No, I'm just kidding.
And that's the end of this episode.
I've got to go get a roadie going.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Carmudgeon Show, which was probably a little on the spicy side. We may get crucified.
We wrapped it around.
We deserved it.
I hope people don't take our quotes out of context, because we're sort of making fun of people, but at the end of the day, we realize that people are people and you love what you love. And, I can make fun of Porsche-weenies because it's fun and you're one of them.
And at least you're not driving a Prius. You're driving slower. Okay. And that's that.